Hi, I'm David Himmel, owner, operator, designer, crafter, maker of Himmel Bros Leather. And this is Himmel Bros TV. So if you can, like my videos, smash it, crash it, bash it, do all the weird SEO shit that I need you to do to make this a better place. This is part 2 on the Beck 333 jacket. This guy right here. Got my glass of red wine. Got my Himmel Bros camp shirt on. We're doing a new run of these in the fall. Got my Free Note jeans on that I've wrecked, smashed, worn out. Awesome, awesome, awesome. He gay. Got my Viberg Himmel collaboration engineer boots. Do those in the future. And we're going to talk about this jacket. Oh, what's the point of having wine if you don't drink it? So, last video I talked about the awesome label, Joseph Gould & Sons, company that was down the street from me for almost 100 years. And we were talking about the Horween leather and the unique tannage they put together for me. Now, I will just point out, all leathers are good. Sometimes people think they only want Japanese horsehide. This Horween is unique. I've worn this jacket 4 times and it's already tunneling on the sleeves. It has beautiful grain. You can see all the different grains from the different wrinkles and movements that were in the original long dead horse. And in this video I'm going to talk about the construction that went into the authenticity of this jacket, right? So a lot of what I do reflects my obsessive compulsive nature to try and create authenticity. Now, I don't often design replicas. I design from my compendium of vintage history to make unique new jackets. But in this case, this is a perfect replica that I did in collaboration with the Thurs in Taiwan. And they have one of the biggest collections of Beck jackets in the world. And they wanted to be able to provide a brand new one for their clients. So they provided me with the liner and the belt buckle because I have all the other parts that I needed to build as close as we could to the original jacket. So we're going to talk about the construction of different parts of this jacket. The pattern is authentic to the original. A shorter body, the classic, beautiful, curved, flowing sleeve that you need for the bending in the elbow when you're riding a motorcycle, the high waist, the offset double collar, W collar if you will, with the slight curves in the collar that are beautiful and that very hard to build slightly off center shape and still keeping the symmetry of the jacket. Now I did that of course by measuring an original jacket and deconstructing it and then rebuilding the pattern without destroying the original jacket. So a lot of this stuff is nerd stuff, but I'm just going to give you a couple examples on this particular jacket of the kinds of difficulties in recreating a leather jacket, both in construction internally and externally. So we've talked about stitching in the past, how hard it is to use cotton thread or even cotton poly thread with high stitch counts that are tight and beautiful, especially on a thick leather like this. So, I mean, I'm not going to get into the technicalities of sewing, but when you look at most leather jackets, they're using what's called a cutting point needle. It looks like a little spear, and it goes and it makes a big old hole with a little X pushes the leather through, so there's no, pushes the thread through the leather so there's no friction, so the thread doesn't break, tightens it down, and then pops back out. And when you do that, it creates a very unaesthetic sort of little X hole. And that hole over time will actually increase in size as the pressure of wearing the jacket rubs that hole with the thread. We use a tiny, tiny, tiny needle, and we go very slowly. That is a round needle, and it just pushes through, deposits the thread. And if you don't go too fast, there's not that heat and that friction building up. And then when the leather's pressed down, it sort of expands after the foot passes the leather and tightens the stitch. This is very typical of sewing of the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. Now that everybody needs to get everything done fast, the stitches are wider apart, the cutting point needle cuts through the leather, and it makes for a very unattractive finish. I'm just saying, we're using similar stitch counts and similar sewing techniques to the original jacket. So I'm going to talk about this belt for a second. I'm just going to undo it. It's very interesting. It's an attached belt. And you can see here, and I'll include some pictures, that's the recreated collar. Or sorry, what am I even saying? That's the recreated buckle. And you can see that it has the liner material on the underside. So I can tell you there are multiple ways to make this kind of belt. You see how it tapers to a very narrow finish. When I first tried to recreate a leather togs jacket, which is the sort of proto version of this jacket, they had a leather on leather belt. And typically when you make that, you sew it inside out, and then you have to turn it. And we tried a multitude of ways to turn this narrow belt inside out. We sewed it partially and tried to turn it. And I can tell you, I got a steel rod that I dulled the end into a rounded point. I soaked it in leather. We could not turn that belt inside out. So when you're making a belt, if you had a leather backside, you could fold it under, glue it down, and just top stitch it. You could just stitch one side and then finish the belt, fold the other side down, top stitch it. So many techniques these companies used to produce these jackets, and the technique would often reflect how many they were making. If they had to make them quickly, they would use the easiest of the techniques, and if they had to make them one at a time, or 10 pieces or 40 pieces, they might use a more complex technique, not really thinking about efficiency. So in this case, we fold it around, get it into place, and then top stitch it down, because there's no turning. Too complicated, too difficult. But it comes in a similar finish. It looks like it was turned. So multitudes of tens of hours spent in trying to figure out the best way to create that look and finish on just the attached belt. Right? We used a replica Talon Sunburst zipper on this. Those zippers were sourced from Talon, Hong Kong, and I hand dye them. I get them all with white cotton tape. White cotton tape, not super strong, but very authentic to original 30s and 40s jackets. So from a functional basis, not the best choice, but from an authenticity basis, a really great choice. And we recreated the pull tabs with the silver spots in an identical manner to the original Beck jacket. You'll see on this jacket, for example, that the pockets on the D pocket, the ammunition pocket or the cigarette pocket, is riveted down with tube rivets. I developed a process for putting these tube rivets in that imitates the original process of tube riveting for reinforcement of the 30s. That required me to get a steel die made from a custom steel die maker. There aren't many of these guys left. I had to go to Cambridge, Ontario, where they make cars, and there's a guy who makes custom fabricated steel parts. I brought him the original tube rivets, and I said, this is what I want to do. And he fabricated a custom die, and we put these rivets on one by one using a kick press, and we gently tap them so that the rivet collapses and folds around and catches the leather, which is essentially, excuse me, essentially the original way in which they put those rivets in on the original jackets. We skive all the seams, and we recreated all the subtle curves of the original Beck 333, especially the D pocket, which has this very subtle shape. Oddly, I compared the pattern to the Leather Togs jacket, D pocket, that I have, and it was almost identical. So that's essentially as much authenticity as you can get in recreating a pattern. Inside the jacket, what you can't see is that we've skived the seams and we've joined the seams essentially the same way these original jackets were made. So you've got a build that is inside and out as authentic as the original. And hopefully the guys that have purchased these jackets will have pictures over time as they age that will age identically or as authentically as what my vintage Beck 333s in my collection look like. Time will tell. I'm hoping we'll get some comparisons in the future that will reflect the authenticity, because if the jacket ages the same way, that's a good indicator that you've built it so similarly to the original jacket that it's actually wearing in the same way. The last note I will say on this jacket is the incredible beauty of this Horween horsehide and its grain, and I'll try and capture some of these in photo stills, really comes out on the back panels where you have to cut this one giant piece. In modern day construction terms, cutting that one single piece is a really expensive process because you're looking for a chunk out of the middle of your horse skin that isn't too damaged and it's even, and it's not from a grainy bit that say like the belly or the shoulder of the horse where it's going to wrinkle weirdly over time when you're building the jacket. So you sort of have to select the places from the hide that you're cutting in order to make sure that the jacket ages and looks nice in a nice characteristic way over time. So you often see in production jackets to the 50s, 60s, and 70s, you'll get a vintage jacket and it's all weird or super wrinkly. Some people will like that look on a big panel, and that's usually just a lack of care in mass production in terms of picking the parts and the locations of where you're nesting the pattern and you're cutting for the various panels. Like, you know, the underarm can be a more wrinkly piece, but the top arm, that if you were riding a motorcycle and you went down on the pavement, you'd want the thickest piece of leather there and you'd want that smooth look aesthetically when you're wearing it. You're going to take that from one of the more central parts of the horse skin, right? So we spent the time to build the subtle curves into the pattern that matched the original. We spent the time to make sure that we use the same construction on the various parts of the jacket, the same stitching, the same parts. And overall, it comes off like a very simple, clean, classic motorcycle jacket. But in the end, there's a lot that goes into that simple look. It's not just I cut a jacket. And in those sweet, subtle details, that's what you're getting when you're getting one of our Himmel jackets. You're getting that sort of incredible quality. You're getting the headaches of me using a 1940s buttonhole Reese keyhole button machine that sometimes doesn't work, and sourcing parts that are hard to come by, and having a team that cares and goes really slowly and really puts together an authentic product that doesn't just fit beautifully, but it has a sense of purpose behind the entire fit. It has a sense of purpose behind the design. So we'll be offering this jacket sooner than later on the website without the liner, the label, and the buckle. That, if you want those details, you got to go to the Thurs and order through their website. But I hope that this was informative. I hope that you come back and watch more videos. I intend to do some videos about vintage leather jackets and vintage companies this year. And I will appreciate anybody's feedback or questions. If you have a video you want me to do something on, just send it along. I always appreciate some good ideas. And I have a lot that I can talk about stuck in this brain that's waiting to pour out of this mouth when it's not drinking this wine. So thanks very much. We'll talk to you soon.